can see, we are here at the Andre Dickens for Mayor campaign headquarters, and I am fired up and ready to go and excited that everyone is here today. And I'm excited to kick off this campaign for the re-election of myself. I'm excited for that.
Andre Dickens! Andre Dickens! We don't like you! We don't like you!
Another year, another election. It is municipal election season here in the city of Atlanta, and that is one of our top stories. For this edition of Political Update, for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025, I'm Tim Darnell, joined by my friend and colleague and lead anchor here at Atlanta News First, Rick Folbaum. Rick, we heard at the top of our stream just a few seconds ago, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens formally announcing his re-election campaign to continue his term as 61st Atlanta Mayor. We also heard a little bit of a clip from a protest that occurred yesterday, kind of in conjunction with Mayor Dickens' kickoff party. His tenure has not been without controversy. We have the Office of the Inspector General story still kind of percolating in the background. The mayor has also been a strong supporter of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, which is a facility that has been mired in controversy since his predecessor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, actually initiated the project under her term, I should say. But as you and I have talked about before, incumbents in Atlanta and Georgia typically don't lose re-election bids. The last mayor that I can recall having lost a re-election bid was Sam Massell in the early 1970s, when Mayor Jackson actually challenged him to become the next mayor of Atlanta, and Jackson was successful and obviously became Atlanta's first African-American male. Tell us your take on the re-election chances of Andre Dickens so far.
Well, this power of the incumbency is certainly not specific to Atlanta and to Georgia. I mean, you could look across the country at politicians at the local, statewide, and national level, and just see that it is something that is a benefit to incumbents when they announce a re-election campaign, that they come into that race with the kind of name recognition that really very few challengers could ever dream of competing with. So, of course, they have their record to run on, which they have to defend as they fight for a second term. But again, it's that name recognition factor that really comes into play when people go to the polls, and that leads a lot of people to vote once again for the person who is already in office. And so as we watch Mayor Dickens launch this re-election campaign, as you said, he's not without his supporters, not without his detractors. You have the whole public safety training center issue. This is the facility that critics call Cop City, of course, and it's going to open later on this spring. And there has been so much controversy surrounding this facility, which I have always found very interesting, because a lot of the people who are complaining about it are people who complain about the tactics that are used by police officers, in the course of law enforcement. They feel like the police are sometimes heavy-handed in how they do things. And so you would think that a training center where officers and prospective officers could train and learn perhaps some other techniques that might be less forceful, whatever you want to call it, that might be something that would be welcomed with open arms. However, that has not been the case with the Public Safety Training Center. Another thing that I think people don't realize right now about the center is that it's going to be an income generator for the city and for the metro Atlanta area, because law enforcement from around the country is going to be able to come to here to this Public Safety Training Center and train here. So they're going to have to pay for that as well. So we'll see how all of that plays out. Of course, we saw the protesters who were out there complaining about the reelection campaign of Andre Dickens. And then you also mentioned the Office of the Inspector General, and that has been a source of some controversy here in Atlanta ever since the former Inspector General stepped down, saying that she had been targeted because of some of the investigations that she and her office have launched into city leaders, into leadership within the Atlanta Fire Department as well. And these are investigations that have been launched, and they are allegations at this point. Nothing has been proved. No wrongdoing has been proved. But again, you bring these allegations, and it's something that's going to cause, it's going to stir up a lot of headlines in the news. Mayor Dickens has said, look, if you're going to investigate for 2 or 3 years and still not have anything to show for it, well, then that says a whole lot about your investigations. But the list of investigations is pretty long, and even if you don't believe that any of them have merit, at the very least, it is interesting to take a look at some of these allegations and read some of the complaints from the Office of the Inspector General. But again, it's something that, at least at this point in time, Mayor Dickens is able to sort of swat away as a little bit of distraction while he makes this reelection announcement. We'll see if it has more teeth as this process plays out. The other thing to wonder and question is who will run against Mayor Dickens. Right now, no one has declared a challenge to the mayor's candidacy. No one on the Democratic side, and no Republicans have come forward. Of course, it's been a while since it's been a minute since Republicans have held the mayoral seat here in the city of Atlanta. So we'll watch all this play out. But Mayor Dickens getting off to a start this week is launching his reelection campaign.
And he has $1.4 million in his war chest. That is not an insignificant amount of money. But you also mentioned the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center protests that are going on. We are expecting within weeks or months perhaps the trial that is involving a lot of these protesters to get underway. And we have seen every indication that a lot of the defendants who have been arrested will be charged under Georgia's Racketeering and Influence Corruption Act, also known as the RICO Act. How do you think this will affect the upcoming municipal elections that's really coming up across every city of Atlanta elected position, from mayor to the city council to the Board of Education? We really don't know how this is going to impact the elections.
Yeah, I think it's too soon. I think that if it's going to impact anyone, it's probably going to be Mayor Dickens, because he is sort of the front-facing, a voice behind the efforts to build, even though it was begun, as you mentioned, under his predecessor. He really has been a staunch supporter of the Public Safety Training Center. He has defended its use and has come out very strongly speaking out against those who have tried to stop its construction from taking place with acts of vandalism and violence and other such things. And so I think that if it's going to have an impact on one of the local elections here, it's most likely going to be the mayoral contest. But again, I think it's too soon to tell exactly whether it's going to have any kind of a negative impact, or whether the training center site could open and could prove to be a quick success, in which case the mayor would be able to sort of turn that into a win as he heads into this reelection campaign.
Well, the other issue that we're following that has happened within the last several days here on this edition of Political Update on Atlanta News First is Crossover Day. Crossover Day at the state legislature, at the state General Assembly, was last week, and it was one of the most important dates in every legislative session. The last day that really kind of marked the midpoint, or the halftime analogy that you drew last week, Rick, where a bill has to have cleared one chamber to be considered for bill passage and possible signature by Governor Brian Kemp by the end of the legislative session. Now, some of the issues that we saw that did make it across crossover day last week was the issue of banning transgender girls and women from participating in men's sports. We also saw the continuing debate over judicial reform, also known as tort reform here in the state of Georgia, that Georgia has been named and listed one of the top judicial sites for tort malpractice or lawsuit abuse or judicial abuse when it comes to lawsuit verdicts. One measure that also passed was a measure that would create a state sales tax holiday for firearm purchases in Georgia, as well as a measure that would encourage citizens of Georgia to enroll in gun safety courses. But Rick, one of the more interesting dichotomies that I found, and I want your input on this, is the fact that a resolution that would, or a law that would require parents to secure firearms from children did not make it through crossover day. So it almost seems like the state is willing to say, yes, we want the sales tax revenue and we want the revenue generated from the sale of firearms in Georgia, and yes, we will encourage gun owners to take gun safety classes, but we're not going to require parents to secure those firearms in a familial household.
So the terminology for this is, Tim, is threading the needle. And that is what's going on here as we watch Republican lawmakers, who of course control both the state House and the state Senate, trying to come up with some type of legislation in response to people's legitimate concerns about gun safety, especially in light of last September's shooting at Appalachia High School. That is so upsetting for everyone across the political spectrum, of course. Lawmakers wanting to be able to say, hey, we are making some proposals, we are doing some things that perhaps could help in that regard when it comes to gun safety storage, things along those lines. But at the same time, being very, very careful to not be seen as to infringe on anyone's Second Amendment rights. At any time there is an explicit punishment that is being handed down for parents of children who may use firearms, or anything that might be viewed by the pro-Second Amendment lobby as being restrictive when it comes to people's rights to keep and bear arms, that is an area that Republican lawmakers just do not want to wade into. And so I think that threading the needle here is an attempt on the part of those lawmakers to be seen as doing something that could potentially be a positive, while at the same time being very careful not to do anything that anyone could criticize for infringing on Second Amendment rights.
And the issue of gun rights, gun safety, Second Amendment rights is a huge political issue in Georgia. We have a major gubernatorial race coming up in 2026, as well as a reelection bid from U.S. Senator John Ossoff. Anything else from crossover day that really stuck out to you?
Well, I think that what I found interesting was the number of times that state lawmakers here in Georgia seem to be taking their direction from the new Trump administration, very clearly trying to align themselves with the new president and his agenda when it comes, as you said, to the transgender issues, when it comes to immigration. There was a bill that passed that has to do with immigration, that Bill 21 would remove legal protections and let people sue governments and government officials who don't follow Georgia laws requiring cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, and also, some other things to do with religious liberty, which of course is a big concern on the part of social conservatives, and something that President Trump has talked about as he has begun his second term. Senate Bill 36 is something that would allow state and governments, or prevent them actually from being able to substantially burden a person's religious freedom Opponents say that it would enable discrimination, but again, this is an attempt on the part of Republican lawmakers here in the state of Georgia to come down in favor of religious freedoms, to allow people to exercise those rights without any kind of infringement. And so again, something that not mirrors 100%, but certainly along the same lines along the same themes that we are hearing from the Trump administration and President Trump as he begins his second term.
Well, today is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025, but on March 12th, 1932, something very, very notable happened. A man named Andrew Jackson Young was born, and today is Andrew Young's 93rd birthday. Rick, we have followed the career of Mayor and Ambassador Young for decades. You and I, we all have our favorite memories. He was the first black congressman from Georgia elected in more than a century in the 1980s, or 1970s, I should say. He became UN ambassador to the U.S. ambassador, I should say, to the United Nations under President Jimmy Carter's term in the White House. He would return to Atlanta and become a twice-elected mayor. We all have our favorite memories of Mayor Young and recollections. He gave me his autograph one time. I'll go ahead and admit this. I'm a huge admirer and fan, and his autograph signature was simply "Keep faith and work hard." Today is his 93rd birthday, and we're wishing him a very happiest of birthdays. One of your
journalist here in this town, he is probably among the top 5 people that you would want to have a meeting with, to introduce yourself to, and really just to learn from, just to sit down. I didn't even care if there was a camera present. I just wanted to be in his presence, to ask him questions about his remarkable life and achievements, and to ask him some questions about where he thought the current political climate stood and where things might be heading in the years to come. I mean, he is just a very gracious and warm individual who was very kind in our meeting, and he also gave me a signed copy of his book. He also gave me a DVD copy of a documentary that he made about the city of Atlanta that he thought might be helpful to me as a new journalist working here in the city. So I was very grateful to him for all of that. You know, the word icon gets thrown around quite a bit, but I think that in the case of Andrew Young, it is certainly fitting and well-deserved. This is someone who has been a part of the fabric of our city and state for many, many years, and on a national and international level as well, someone who has represented the United States, as you said, at the United Nations, and has represented our country in negotiations and in talks and in all kinds of issues here in the U.S. and around the world. He was present during at the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and he has really just continuously popped up time and time again when you talk about the history of Atlanta and the history of the civil rights movement. This is someone who was and continues to be a major voice in that movement. We heard him most recently speaking at the funeral service for former President Jimmy Carter. You could tell that he was frail. He has been confined to a wheelchair for a number of years, but even watching him at the church service, I couldn't help but just think of, here we are looking at another prominent Georgia figure who is, nearing the end of his life at 93 years old. Of course, we wish him many, many years of good health and happiness, but obviously when you reach that age, you're talking about someone's twilight years, and so you look at him and you hear his words and you hear what he has to say, and I think that on this 93rd birthday, it's a good idea, if you have a moment, to do a little research and look up some of the writings, some of the words of Andrew Young that he has delivered over the many decades that he has been in public service. He is someone who I think we can all learn from, and we will continue to learn from for a long time.
Well, on the occasion of his 93rd birthday, we're thanking Andrew Jackson Young for his many decades of service to Atlanta, the state, and the nation, and the world as a whole. We're also thanking all of you for watching and listening to this edition of Atlanta News First, political update, I should say, on Atlanta News First and atlantanewsfirst.com. Reminder, you can watch all of our podcasts on our YouTube channel and also on your Roku app. You can listen to all of the Atlanta News First podcast, be it political update, Decatur Dish, Behind the Investigation, and all of the Atlanta News First podcast on your favorite podcasting platform, be it Amazon, Apple, iTunes, or Spotify. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. On behalf of Rick Bolbaum, I'm Tim Darnell for this edition of Political Update on Atlanta News First.